My name is Josephine Hayes. I was the granddaughter no one ever expected anything from. I wasn't the favorite. I wasn't the rebel. I wasn't even the disappointment. I was invisible. The kind of family member who always brought a dish to dinner, but never got asked how her job was going. The kind who remembered everyone's birthday but never got a card in return. For most of my life, I thought being quiet meant being safe. I was wrong. Because when my grandfather died, and they read his will, all that silence I had given them turned into power. And they hated me for it. It happened on a Tuesday. We were all gathered in my grandfather's living room. The same one with the stained carpet, the heavy wooden shelves, and the smell of old cigars that never quite left. I sat near the back, where I always sat, with my hands folded in my lap and my eyes down. My mother was at the front, perched like royalty, already dressed in black 2 days after the funeral. My Uncle Derek leaned on the doorframe with a smirk, like he knew exactly what was coming. My cousins scrolled their phones under the coffee table. No one looked at me. They never did. Then the lawyer opened the envelope. It was sealed with red wax. My grandfather's initials pressed in like a signature that couldn't be forged. The lawyer cleared his throat. To my daughter Martha. He read, I leave the red cedar cabinet and its contents. Use it well or don't. My mother blinked. The cabinet. She whispered, like she'd heard a mistake. To my son, Derek, I leave the 1969 Dodge Charger. It does not run, much like he doesn't. A few forced laughs. Derek didn't smile. To my grandchildren, the lawyer went on. Except Josephine. I leave a box of family photographs. You might find something real in them if you look hard enough. My chest tightened. The air in the room stilled. And to Josephine May Hayes, he said, looking straight at me, I leave the house, the land, the savings, the trust account, and the key to the safe beneath the floorboards. The silence that followed wasn't shocked. It was violent. I could feel my mother's eyes burning holes in my skin. My uncle's posture snapped upright. My cousins froze. The lawyer continued. Josephine is to take full possession immediately. The rest is not contestable. Any legal challenge will void your portion. He folded the will like it was just a menu. That concludes the reading. My name still rang in the air like a wrong note no one could unhear. She manipulated him, my mother hissed. He was old. Confused. He wrote this 3 years ago, the lawyer said. Perfectly sound. He even filmed a video version, if needed. Derek stepped forward. She barely spoke to him. She was never here. That's not true, I said. My voice didn't sound like mine. It sounded stronger. Every face turned toward me, like I'd spoken out of turn, like I'd forgotten my place. I was here every Sunday, I said. He made me coffee. We played chess. He told me stories. He taught me how to check the well, how to patch the roof, how to keep the coyotes away. He wanted me to have this. They looked at me like I'd stolen something. But I hadn't. I was the only one who had ever listened. I stood up. The floor creaked beneath my shoes. I walked to the lawyer and took the small black envelope he handed me. The key inside was cool against my palm. Behind me, Derek muttered, This isn't over. He was wrong. It had just begun. Because I know my family. I know what they're capable of. And I know they will try everything to take this from me. Guilt, lies, legal tricks, maybe worse. But this time I'm not the quiet one. I'm not the shadow. This time I'm the storm, and I have everything to lose. They didn't scream. Not yet. People like my family don't explode right away. They boil. The first signs came that night. I was still at the house, walking through the halls like I was wearing someone else's skin. Everything looked the same. The peeling wallpaper, the dusty books, the old photographs. But the silence was heavier, like the house knew it had changed hands. I hadn't even sat down before the first knock came. It was my cousin Madeline, blonde hair perfectly curled, lipstick untouched, smile like a wolf in pearls. Hey, Joe, she said, sweet like artificial sugar. Mind if we talk? I didn't answer. I just opened the door wider. She walked in like she'd done it 1,000 times, even though I knew she hadn't stepped foot in this house in 5 years. Not since Grandpa told her she had no work ethic and sent her home with a rake and a list of chores. She sat on the armrest of the couch, crossed her legs, and looked around like she was appraising the place. "So," she said, "you're really keeping it." I raised an eyebrow. "The house," she clarified. "I mean, no offense, but you live in the city. You're not exactly a boots in the mud kind of girl." I didn't respond. She smiled wider. "Look, we both know this whole thing's insane. Grandpa was old. He probably wasn't thinking straight. Maybe he just didn't update his will, or maybe he felt sorry for you." Her voice dropped lower. "Either way, I think it would be really gracious of you to, redistribute things a little. Keep the house, sure, but maybe divide the assets. Make it fair." I tilted my head. "You mean, give up what he left me?" She shrugged, like it was obvious. "You're not like the rest of us, Joe. You've never wanted all this. You're quiet, thoughtful, generous." "Generous," I repeated. She nodded. I smiled. Then I stood up. "I think you should leave now." Her face twitched, just for a second. She stood too, slower. "You're making a mistake," she said. "They're not going to let this go." "I'm not asking them to," I said. "I'm telling them I already did." Her expression hardened. No more smile. She turned without another word and left. I locked the door behind her. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was afraid. Not yet. But because I could feel it starting. The unraveling. The next day it was my Uncle Derek. He called 3 times, left 2 voicemails. The first one sounded angry. "Josephine, you don't understand what you're doing. That property is worth 7 figures. It should be divided. Call me back." The second one was worse. "Look, you're young. You don't know how this works. We can make a deal. I'll take care of the taxes and upkeep. You just sign over the deed. You don't want to be stuck with land you can't manage." I didn't call back. By the end of the week, they had already started spreading rumors. At church, I was told I had pressured Grandpa into rewriting the will. At the grocery store, someone asked if I was really staying out there all alone. Their voice sounded concerned, but their eyes were curious, hungry. In town, people smiled too long, asked too many soft questions. The kind meant to disguise knives. I didn't flinch. What they didn't know, what my family had never bothered to notice, was that I had spent most of my life watching. And I was done being quiet. I started making moves. First, I went to the courthouse and requested a certified copy of the will. Then I visited the county records office and filed the transfer of property. Everything in my name. Official locked. After that, I called a local lawyer, a woman named Helen Katz. She was in her 60s, wore heavy boots, and smiled like someone who'd won more fights than she lost. I liked her immediately. When I showed her the documents, she didn't blink. "You're going to need security cameras," she said. "I figured," I said. "And a backup generator. They'll try to cut power first. Already ordered one." She nodded once. "Good. You're smarter than they think." I smiled for real this time. The next letter arrived 2 days later. Certified mail. Return address my mother's. It wasn't handwritten. Inside was a formal request to reopen discussion of the estate for purposes of equitable distribution. It was signed by a family lawyer I'd never met, someone from the city. Slick paper, corporate tone. At the bottom, in my mother's tight, careful handwriting, a note: "Joe, be reasonable. We're family." I didn't respond. Instead, I scanned the letter, emailed it to Helen, and went back to work. But it was the night visit that changed everything. I was in the kitchen, boiling water for tea. The clock had just passed midnight. The house creaked the way old houses do. I had left a lamp on in the hallway. Everything else was dark. Then I heard it, the gravel crunching under slow tires. I moved to the front window and looked out through the curtain. A car, no lights, just idling at the end of the drive. I didn't move. After a minute, it rolled forward, slowly, too slowly. It didn't come to the house. It circled the barn once, then disappeared down the road. I stood there for a long time after it was gone. The next morning, I bought a shotgun. I didn't tell anyone. That weekend, I opened the safe under the floorboards. The key was still in the black envelope. It fit like it had been waiting for me. Inside was a metal box. And inside that box, 3 things. A handwritten letter. A folded deed to an additional 10 acres I didn't know existed. And a flash drive. The letter was short. Joe, if you're reading this, they're already circling. Do not trust them. Not one, I kept records. Everything's on the drive. Use it if you must. Or don't. But know this, I left it to you because I knew you'd do the right thing. Stay sharp, stay silent, and never forget who they really are. LH, I plugged the drive into my laptop. What I found made my blood go cold. Bank transfers, property documents, wire records, evidence of fraud, evidence of theft, all signed, all traceable, all tied to my uncle, my cousin, even my mother. My grandfather had known, all of it. And he had left it to me, not just the house, but the truth. And the power to burn them all down. I didn't want revenge. Not at first. I wanted space, peace, a chance to exist without being used. But people like my family don't let go. Not when they think something belongs to them. Especially not when it was given to someone like me. They called it unfair, said I had manipulated a dying man, said I was too naive to manage anything beyond a studio apartment and a part-time job. I let them talk. What they didn't know, what they never even bothered to imagine, was that while they had been laughing behind my back, I had been learning. Learning to survive, learning to watch, learning exactly how to take apart a lie, one piece at a time. The first thing I did was make copies of everything on the flash drive. 2 hard drives. One locked in the safe, the other mailed to a friend out of state. No one knew about the third copy. Stored in cloud storage under a fake name, split into 3 encrypted parts. Paranoia, maybe. But I had seen what desperation made people do. I wasn't going to be caught off guard. Then I hired someone, not a lawyer. I already had Helen. This was different. His name was Craig. 40-something, quiet voice, soft eyes, mean instincts. He wasn't cheap, but he had one job dig. I gave him the names. Derek, Madeline. My mother, I gave him dates, property sales, suspicious business filings, family trusts, the shell companies they used to hide bad decisions. 3 weeks later, Craig called me. You were right, he said, but it's worse than you thought, and sent me a file. Inside a paper trail of misused family funds, tax evasion, fake consulting fees, even a hidden offshore account, under my grandfather's name, but redirected last year without authorization. I asked, is it criminal? He said, if the right people see it, yes. Then he asked something I didn't expect. You want to press charges? I paused. Then I said, not yet. See, the thing about revenge is, it's not just about hitting back. It's about timing. And sometimes, the most painful thing you can do to someone isn't ruin them. It's letting them ruin themselves, while you make sure every step is recorded. So I started setting traps. Subtle ones. Trap 1, the lawyer letter. I had Helen draft a formal cease and desist, no threats, just boundaries. It reminded them the will was legal, binding, and final. Any further contact regarding inheritance would be considered harassment. Any attempt to contest it in court would be met with full legal response. We sent one to my uncle, one to my mother, one to Madeline. They didn't like that. Derek responded first. A voicemail full of heat. You think some paper scares me. You think you can hide behind lawyers and paperwork. You're not untouchable, Joe. I saved the voicemail. Madeline posted something on social media. A vague quote about betrayal and blood. I took a screenshot. My mother didn't say anything, but 2 days later, I found a dead bird nailed to my fence. A message. Old school. Ugly, I didn't flinch. Instead, I called a local reporter. Her name was Lay, late 30s, known for taking down shady land developers and small town corruption. She didn't like rich bullies, and she didn't like cover-ups. I gave her the first layer of the story. The sudden inheritance, the attempted coercion, the threats. She asked, "What's the catch?" I said, I have proof of fraud. I just want you to watch. She raised an eyebrow. Watch what? The fall, I said, trapped to the audit. Remember Craig? He had contacts. He made a call. 2 weeks later, my uncle's company received an audit notice. IRS, official, real. Nothing traced back to me. But it didn't have to. I knew what they'd do. Panic, shift money, shred files, all while the government watched, all while Craig tracked the changes, all while I stayed quiet. Meanwhile, I stayed in the house, fixed the porch, repaired the old well pump, painted the front steps. Every improvement was documented, dated, and attached to property value records. I wasn't just keeping the place. I was building a case that I was the rightful owner, that I was improving it, that I was protecting it from them. Then came the surprise visit. Late afternoon, cloudy sky, smell of rain. I was pruning the hedges when a black SUV rolled into the drive. My mother stepped out. She looked smaller than I remembered. Older, exhausted. She didn't come with papers this time. Just a purse and a familiar frown. I don't want to fight, she said. Then why are you here? I just want to talk. I hesitated, then nodded toward the porch. We sat in silence for a long time. Finally, she said, this house was never meant for you. I said nothing. It should have gone to your uncle, or to me. You're young. You have your whole life. I looked at her. I had my whole life, until you spent it. She winced. I kept going. I paid for your car, your surgery, your second mortgage. I never said a word. But when he left this to me, it was too much, right? Suddenly I'm a threat. Her voice cracked. That's not true. Yes, it is. She tried to cry. Real tears this time. Or maybe just practiced ones. I miss you, she said. We all do. No, I said. You miss control. Then I stood up. She didn't follow, and I didn't invite her back. That night, I opened the flash drive again. There was one folder I hadn't checked. It was labeled, simply, for later, and since I had a video file, I clicked play. It was grainy. Recorded on a phone. My grandfather sat at his desk, hands folded. His voice was calm. If you're watching this, then the will has been read. And they're circling. Listen to me, Joe. You are the only one who listened. I know they'll come after you. I know they'll try to break you. But you've always been stronger than you look. And if they push, push back. Not with hate. With truth. He paused, looked straight into the camera. They took everything from me, my savings, my trust. But I held on to this house because I knew. Someday, you'd need a place where they couldn't reach you. I didn't cry, but I felt something crack open. Not pain, not anger. Something sharper, something final. By the end of the month, the story broke. Labe published a quiet expose, names redacted, sources protected. But the pieces were all there. A small town family. A contested inheritance. A web of financial misconduct buried under years of silence. It didn't name them, but people knew, and the calls started coming. To Derek, to Madeline, even to my mother. The walls were closing in, and I hadn't even lifted a finger. Not really. All I had done was stop giving. The first real crack came on a Thursday. I had just finished fixing the roof over the back porch, something my uncle had meant to get to for years, when I noticed the mailbox door hanging open. Inside was a single sheet of paper. No envelope, no stamp, no name. It read, property like this is hard to keep safe all by yourself. Accidents happen. I didn't panic. I made copies. Then I installed motion sensors around the property and wired them straight to my phone. I didn't tell anyone, not even Helen. Because this wasn't just about money anymore. This was about control. And control is something my family only understands when it's being taken from them. I started to see it in their eyes. At the grocery store, my cousin Madeline stared at me from across the produce section like I was some kind of stranger. Her perfect hair was tied back, but her smile was gone. She didn't wave, didn't nod, just watched me, like she was waiting for something to give. Then she walked away. She hadn't spoken to me since the day of the will. I didn't miss her voice. 2 nights later, my motion sensor pinged. Back fence, 2:37 a.m. I checked the feed, a figure. Hooted, moving fast, too fast they didn't touch anything, didn't break in, just walked the edge of the property, let themselves be seen. I called the police. They came 20 minutes later, made a show of writing things down. Could have been a prank, one officer said. I nodded, then handed him a USB with the footage. He blinked. You have cameras? Yes, I said. And I back everything up. He looked uncomfortable. Got anyone in mind who'd do something like this? I gave him 3 names. He didn't write them down, but he didn't say no either. The next day, I went to see Helen. She was sitting behind her desk, sorting through a thick stack of paperwork. You sure about this? She asked, handing me a folder. Inside, a legal notice of full severance from my mother, name removed from all emergency contacts, joint accounts, shared insurance plans. Yes, I said. She's already made her choice. Helen nodded once. Then it's done. A week passed, then 2, nothing new, no visits, no letters. I knew better than to think it was over, but the silence was strange, like the air before a storm. And I was right, because on the 3rd Sunday it came, a letter from their lawyer. But not about the house. About the past, they were demanding repayment. Every cent I'd ever borrowed, every gift, now reframed as a loan. Even things like my grandfather's Christmas checks, $50 in a red envelope, suddenly counted as financial aid. It was absurd, but that wasn't the point. The point was pressure. To make me respond, to make me sweat, to make me afraid. I didn't respond. I forwarded it to Helen. She called me 2 hours later. I filed a counter, she said. Defamation, emotional distress, harassment. I didn't ask how much it would cost, because I already knew what it was worth. That same week, the wind blew hard, harder than it had in years. Trees swayed, power lines snapped in the next town over, and sometime after midnight, one of my windows shattered. I heard it from upstairs. The sharp sound of glass and the thud of something heavy hitting the floor. I didn't move. I sat up in bed, heart steady. I waited 5 minutes. 10. Then I walked downstairs. There in the middle of my living room floor was a brick wrapped in a towel. No note this time. Just the message in the act. I called the police again. This time they came faster, took photos, measured the impact site, promised to increase patrols. I nodded, then handed them the second USB. They didn't say much after that. But they left with their shoulders tighter than before, and I slept with the shotgun next to my bed. The truth was, they were slipping. They weren't used to being watched, used to being held accountable. They were used to guilt working, used to tears buying silence, used to screaming until people folded. But I didn't fold, I filed, and the more I filed, the more nervous they became. Helen got a call from their lawyer. They wanted to settle. I said no, I wasn't done. Not yet. Because there was still one card they didn't know I had. One clause in the will they had overlooked. Buried in the language, in the legal phrasing, was a condition. If anyone attempted to intimidate, defame, or harass me regarding the inheritance, their own share, however small, would be legally forfeit. All of it. Even the photos. Even the cabinet. Even the car. That clause had teeth. And I was about to let it bite. I had Helen file a petition. It included the threatening letter from the mailbox, the dead bird, the security footage of the figure at the fence, the broken window, the voicemail from Derek, screenshots of Madeline's posts, a log of every unwanted contact, every message, every thinly veiled threat, and at the bottom, a simple request: execute Clause 9b of the Hayes Testament regarding disqualification. I signed it in black ink, dated it, and waited. The next court date was quiet, just a hearing, no jury, no cameras. But they showed up, all of them, my mother, Derek, Madeline. They looked tired, angry, fraying at the edges. Their lawyer tried to argue context, said it was grief, misunderstanding, a family dispute, not harassment. But the judge wasn't new. She read the papers, listened to the audio, watched the footage. Then she looked at me. You've remained calm through this. Yes, Mom, I said. You never retaliated. No, ma'am. She nodded, then turned to them. The clause stands. Bang, just like that, they lost everything, even the photos, even the lies, even the illusion that they still had a say. Outside the courtroom, no one said a word. I walked past them slowly, one step at a time. My mother opened her mouth like she might say something, but she didn't. She just watched me go. And for the first time in my life, she looked afraid. The silence after the court ruling was loud. No phone calls, no letters, no cars idling at the edge of the property. Just stillness. But I knew them. They weren't done. They were just regrouping. And sure enough, it didn't take long. It started small. A post on the town Facebook group. Anonymous, of course. Funny how some people suddenly care about old houses when money's involved. Then another. Old man Hayes was losing it near the end. Maybe someone helped him write that will. No names, just poison disguised as questions. People in town started acting differently. At the post office, the clerk who used to chat with me wouldn't make eye contact. At the gas station, the cashier handed me change without a word. At church, one of the deacons offered to pray for my confusion. I didn't react, but I took note. Someone was spreading a version of the story, and they were doing it well. Then came the real hit. A local blogger posted an article titled, "Inheritance or Manipulation. The Hayes Family Rift." It was full of speculation, all fed by unnamed family members. It painted me as a schemer, said I had isolated my grandfather, turned him against his own children, that I moved fast after his death, locking out the rest of the family, draining accounts. It quoted someone close to the family who said, "She was always quiet. You never knew what she was thinking. But she wanted that house for years. She played the long game. I read it once, then I read it again, and then I got to work. I called Leigh, the reporter I had spoken to before. She answered on the first ring. I saw it," she said. "It's ugly. I have documents," I told her. A will, a video, a full financial timeline, and a folder labeled 1979 you'll want to see. She didn't ask what was in it. She just said, "When can we meet?" We sat down in her office 2 days later. I slid the folder across the table. Inside, police reports, newspaper clippings, and my grandfather's handwritten notes. It was about an old incident no one talked about anymore. A business deal gone wrong. A woman who filed a report. A settlement paid in cash to avoid criminal charges. And my uncle's name at the center of it. "It was buried," I said. My grandfather paid her to stay quiet, but he never forgot. That's why he cut them out. Leigh's eyes didn't leave the page. This changes everything." I nodded. "I don't want revenge," I said, "but I won't let them rewrite the story." She looked at me like she finally saw me clearly. Not the quiet girl, not the victim, but someone with teeth. "I'll publish it," she said. "But once this goes live, it won't be quiet anymore." I know. The article dropped 3 days later. The truth behind the Hayes will, what silence tried to bury. This time there were names. There were dates. There were documents. My grandfather's handwritten notes. A copy of the police report. Even a quote from the original officer who'd retired 5 years ago. He didn't press charges because of the family name, but he should have. The town changed overnight. People stopped whispering. Some apologized. Some avoided me completely. The blogger took down their post within 24 hours, and my uncle, he went dark, deleted social media, closed his office, gone. But not for long, because karma doesn't wait forever. And when the IRS audit report became public, confirming unpaid taxes, offshore transfers, and falsified filings, the town saw him for what he was, a man who lived off borrowed trust and burned every bridge on his way out. They issued a warrant. Fraud, tax evasion, perjury. I wasn't surprised. He had been running on borrowed time. My mother tried one last time. She showed up on my porch. No warning, no call, just her in a tattered coat in the rain. She looked thinner, pale. Her eyes carried something I hadn't seen in years. Not manipulation, not anger, shame. "I didn't know what he did," she said softly. I didn't answer. "I believed him when he said you stole it. I believed him because it was easier. Still, I said nothing. She took something from her pocket. A photo. Me at age 8, sitting in my grandfather's lap, holding a mason jar full of fireflies, smiling like I had a place in the world. He kept this, she said, on his desk. Until the end. My throat tightened. But I didn't cry. She handed it to me. I won't bother you again, she said, then turned and walked down the steps. Disappearing into the storm, I stood there for a long time. Then I placed the photo on the window ledge, let the rain fall, and breathed. A week later, Helen called. It's done, she said. Everything's processed. The estate is clean. Your ownership is uncontested. The harassment filings are on record. And the fraud cases are moving forward. Good, I said. She hesitated. You want me to close the file? I looked around. The house was quiet, warm, mine. Yes, I said. Close it. That night I lit a fire in the old stone hearth, made tea in the kitchen, sat in the armchair my grandfather always used. And for the first time since his death, I felt safe. Not because they were gone, but because I was still here, and I wasn't afraid of them anymore. People ask me now why I stayed. Why I didn't just sell the house, take the money, and disappear. I could have. I had offers, good ones. Developers who wanted to tear it down and build cabins. Wealthy retirees looking for a quiet place to die. A tech couple from the city who promised to keep the rustic feel. I could have taken the check, changed my number, and never looked back. But I didn't, because this wasn't about the house. Not really. It was about the girl who used to sit on the porch steps with scraped knees and a book in her lap. The one who thought being quiet made her invisible. The one who never asked for anything because asking meant owing. The one who gave and gave and gave, and was still told it wasn't enough. That girl deserved to have something that was hers. So I stayed. The seasons changed quickly after that. Fall came in heavy and gold. The leaves turned the driveway into fire. The wind shifted from warm to biting. The nights grew longer. I liked it. It felt like the land was shedding its skin. Starting over, just like me, I started small, cleared out the upstairs bedroom, repainted the kitchen cabinets, fixed the squeaky hinge on the front door. I donated 3 boxes of junk left behind by people who'd never loved this place enough to care for it. I kept the photo, the one of me with the fireflies. I hung it in the hallway, eye level, a reminder not of who I was, but of who I never wanted to be again. The town softened too. It took time, but people started waving again. A few even came by, quietly, cautiously, to say they were sorry for listening to the wrong story. I didn't hold grudges. But I didn't invite anyone inside either. Some things take longer to heal, and some things don't heal at all. They just stop bleeding. One Sunday morning, I found something unexpected. I was cleaning out the shed behind the house, the one Grandpa used to call the vault. It was mostly rusted tools, old fishing gear, and a broken rocking chair. But in the far corner, tucked behind a wall panel, I found a box. Inside, letters, dozens of them, all addressed to me, none of them ever sent, written in my grandfather's square, slanted handwriting. They started the year I turned 17. Some were short, 1 or 2 lines. Others were full pages. One read, "Today I saw your mother cash another check. Told me it was for your school books. I knew better. I'm sorry. I should have said something. But I didn't want to lose you too." Another said, "You fixed the fence today without being asked. I watched from the kitchen. You didn't even know I saw. But I did. You always show up when no one else does." And another, "I hope one day, when I'm gone, you find these, so you know the truth. You weren't forgotten. You weren't overlooked. You were always the only one I trusted." I sat on the floor for hours, reading every word, and for the first time since the will, I cried. Not for him. Not for the years I lost. But for the version of myself that kept waiting for someone to choose her. Not because they had to, but because they wanted to. He had. He just hadn't known how to say it out loud. So he wrote it instead. And I heard him. I framed the last letter. Hung it above the mantel. It reads, "Silence doesn't mean weakness, Joe. It means patience. But one day, patience runs out. And when it does, you'll move like thunder. And they won't know what hit them. It's been a year now. My uncle pled guilty. 18 months in federal prison. My mother moved south. No forwarding address. Madeline. She married a man with a boat and deleted every trace of her maiden name online. The family as I knew it is gone. But I'm still here, still on this land, still waking up to the creak of the floorboards and the smell of pine through the window. Still cooking lasagna some Sundays. Not for anyone else, just for me. I planted a garden, painted the fence white, adopted a rescue dog with one eye and a crooked tail. Named him Leo. He sleeps at my feet while I read on the porch. Sometimes people stop by. Neighbors. Kids selling cookies. Strangers looking for directions. They all say the same thing. I always wondered who lived here. I smile. Just a little. Just someone who finally figured out how to stay. I'm not angry anymore. Not bitter. Not scared. Just steady. Rooted. The girl who stayed quiet. She's gone. And in her place is a woman who knows exactly who she is. And exactly what she's worth. It had been 5 years since the will was read. 5 years since I stood in that living room, holding a black envelope and shaking hands. 5 years since I became the woman no one expected, and the one they couldn't control. And I hadn't heard from any of them since. Not directly. Until this morning. It came in the mail. No return address, no handwriting. Just my name, typed on a white label. I opened it slowly. Inside was a single sheet of paper. Madeline Hayes and Julian R. Brennan request your presence. I almost laughed. No note, no explanation, no apology. Just an assumption. As if nothing had happened. As if time had rewritten the past for them. I turned the card over. On the back was a handwritten line, not hers. I would understand if you never came. But I would be grateful if you did. Aunt Linda, my mother's sister. The only one who hadn't picked a side. I hadn't seen her since the trial. But I remembered how she stood apart from the rest. How she looked at me like she wasn't surprised by anything I did. Except that I had waited so long to do it. I didn't RSVP. But I didn't throw the invitation away, either. I left it on the table, sat down with a cup of tea, and stared out the window at the pine trees swaying in the wind. By noon, I was in the attic, looking for something I hadn't thought about in years. My grandfather's toolbox, heavy, rusted. Inside, everything smelled like him. Old metal, dust, cedar oil. I found what I was looking for tucked beneath the screwdriver tray. A letter I had written him. Never sent. Just after he passed, it read, I don't know why you left it all to me. I don't know what you saw in me that no one else did. But I promise I'll protect it. I'll protect what mattered to you, even if it means protecting it from them. I read it again. Then I folded it back up, closed the box, and smiled, because I had kept that promise, every day. I didn't go to the wedding, but I did send a gift, a small painting, hand-framed, of the house in winter. No note, no name, just the image. A quiet message they'd have to interpret themselves. A week later, I got a voicemail from a number I didn't recognize. Hi. I don't know if this is still you, but if it is, thank you. The painting was beautiful. We didn't expect it. I hope you're well. I really do. Maybe someday we can talk. No pressure. Just someday. She didn't say her name. She didn't need to. I didn't call back. But I saved the message, not out of hope, not out of regret. Just as a record. A gentle reminder that sometimes people come back. Not because they've changed, but because you have. 5 years, and I'm still here. The garden is bigger now. The fence freshly painted each spring. Leo's face is a little grayer, but he still chases squirrels like he's invincible. I built a workshop out back, started refinishing old furniture, selling some online, giving some away. People know me now, not as that girl with the inheritance, but as Jo, the one who grows tomatoes in May, the one who fixes broken chairs, the one who always waves first but never talks about the past, not because I'm hiding it, but because I already lived it, and I survived. Some nights I sit on the porch and reread his letters. They're worn now, creased at the corners, smudged with years, but they still carry his voice, still remind me of who I was and who I became, the girl who stayed quiet, the woman who didn't, the storm that came after the silence. This is my ending. No applause, no courtroom finale, just a house that still stands, a family I don't answer to, and a life I built, not from inheritance, but from intention. And if anyone ever asks me what I did with all of it, the land, the trust, the story, I'll say this: I turned it into peace, and I kept it. Maybe you know someone like Josephine, or maybe you are someone like her, the quiet one, the one taken for granted, the one who gave everything, until there was nothing left to give. But here's the truth: you don't have to stay quiet. You don't have to keep proving yourself to people who only love you when it benefits them. You can walk away. You can protect what's yours. And sometimes, choosing yourself is the loudest kind of revenge there is. If this story spoke to something in you, don't keep it to yourself. Share it. Subscribe to the channel. And leave a comment. Tell us, have you ever had to walk away from someone who called it family? This is Telling Story with me, where quiet voices become powerful echoes. We'll see you in the next story.